Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Comp Health. If you're a physician looking for a new job or considering locum tenens for the first time, be sure to check out Comp Health. I've worked locum tenens with Comp Health. I appreciate the personalized experience with a recruiter dedicated to my specialty who knows my needs and goals. Comp Health also offers full-time permanent jobs if you are looking for a longer-term switch. For more information, check out comphealth.com. Now, today we have a very special program. My guest is Scott McDermott, and he's got a long story to tell us. And I wanted him on the program because, we do a lot of doctor programs, but this is going to be kind of a patient program and how a patient interacted with the healthcare system ultimately very successfully, but had a long journey. And Scott is going to tell us about it. Scott, welcome.
Great. It's good to be here. Thanks, Andrew.
Well, it really is good to be here, right? Compared to where you were. So tell us that story. What happened?
So I was competing in the Ultraman World Championships. So Ultraman is a triathlon. It's a 3-day triathlon. It's 2.5 times longer than Ironman. And so it's kind of a big event. It's a 320-mile race on the big island of Hawaii and Kona. And I had done the race a couple times before, but when I had done this one, I really wanted to compete. I wanted to be top 5. So I was pushing really hard to achieve a good result. And on day 2 on the bike course, I was going about 45 miles an hour on the bike down a bit of a mountainside in the rain. And when I got onto a bridge deck, apparently there was algae on the bridge deck. I found that out later because I woke up 3 days later in the brain trauma unit on another island on Oahu. And I had broken my left arm in half. I broke the radius in 3 pieces. I shattered my shoulder in 4 pieces. I broke 5 ribs. I busted my knee, tore my MCL, took a chunk of cartilage out. And as I was flipping down the highway, my helmet wasn't done up tight enough and it spun, and I apparently flipped around and I hit my skull on the concrete curb and I broke my skull open, exposing my brain, and had a really nasty brain injury. I had hemorrhaging to the frontal lobes. I had diffuse axonal scarring and tearing, and I had a point impact at the base, just back behind my ear where the skull broke open. And so it wasn't good. I had really bad whiplash, and I'd torn a big chunk of the side of my face, and it was on and on, right? So it was kind of a bad deal.
What's the last, I actually, for better or worse, I see patients like that almost every day at the trauma center where I work at Regional One Health here in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a regional trauma center, and they're not always ultra marathon kind of athletes, but usually car accidents is the big one. And of course, motorcycles and some bicycles. And one of the things that often happens is people say, I don't know what happened. Do you remember what happened?
Nope. I was talking to an athlete from Australia that I had just passed, Peter Hudson. So as I was passing him going up a hill, we slowed down enough to chat for a little bit. You're not allowed to draft. So you've got 15 seconds to pass someone. So we just chatted briefly going up the hill, and I pulled ahead of him and carried on. And then I woke up and looked across a room, and my best friend jumped out of a chair, and I was like, where the hell am I? Why am I in a bed? Why does everything hurt? So yeah, it did hurt. I have one other memory. Yeah. I have one other memory, which I thought was a dream, and that was them stapling my skull plate together. And I would have sworn somebody had a combat boot on the side of my face and somebody had a Hilti gun on the back of my head. That's how it felt. I thought it was a dream, but I had metal things sticking out of my head, and I'm like, nope, that wasn't a dream.
Wow. Okay. And when did all this happen?
This was November in 2015.
So not that long ago.
Nope.
You look pretty good now. Is there anything that doesn't work?
There's a few odd things from the brain injury. The part of my brain that was damaged the most is my ability to connect names and faces. And so that's frustrating because I used to be really good at it. I owned a 15,000 square foot gym and we had 1,000 members and I knew most of them by name. And that was just gone. So I'll have people that I've known for 10 years and I'll be in a conversation with them and just no idea what their name is. And then
It's on the tip of my. I know you, but the name is. What about new? What about new memories when you're like you meet me, for example? I'm Dr. Wilner. Now, is that going to just vanish when this program's over, or are you going to be able to hold on to that one?
it's weak. I have to work on it. It takes more effort than it used to. So if I don't reinvest in your name over the next couple of weeks or so, 6 months later, it won't be there. So it's interesting and it's a difference. But honestly, considering all that was wrong, I'm fine with that. Like I've got the metal plates were put in my arm and put on my shoulder and then taken back out again. I had knee surgery to fix the cartilage and the MCL, and that was all fixed. And I did some therapy to get my lungs, my ribs to expand again so I could breathe properly. And I did a lot of neural training with, the lighted pen at the different diagonals and reading the charts on the wall where it says green, yellow, blue, orange, but the word green is blue and the word orange is pink. And you have to say the color, not the word, or vice versa. And it's timed. And I had to do all those things. I had to do some cognitive retraining so that I could run without tripping. And so there was a lot of work to be done. And I'm good now. I'm racing again. I went back to the World Championships in 2018 and completed the task. So, and we made a really cool documentary that's won some awards. So it's been a heck of a journey. It was 3 really hard years of rehab and physio and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and all different things, massage, chiropractic, everything. So it was a big effort to get back to good again. But yeah, I'm doing all right.
So 3 years of recovery. Now, before I forget, send me the link to that film so I can put it in the show notes. I think that would
Sure.
be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Now, if that happened to me, which is not likely because I can't compete really in that ultra marathon, but I could certainly see, riding the bike around the corner and getting squashed by slipping in a puddle or getting squashed by an SUV and finding myself 3 days later downtown and, in the ICU.
I hope
I
that
think
doesn't happen.
thank you. Yes. But I think I'd be really depressed.
Mm.
It's like, gee, and here you were like a perfectly healthy guy, right? I mean, this was, explain again what this race is. It's longer than a marathon, or
It's longer than an Ironman triathlon. So day 1 is a 6-mile open ocean swim, followed by a 90-mile bike. And then day 2 is a 190-mile bike. And day 3 is a 52.5-mile double marathon. And it's all done on the island of Hawaii, of Kona. So it's hot, it's 100 Fahrenheit and stuff like that. And there's mountains everywhere and all like that. So it's a very, very challenging race.
so you run 52 miles on the third day?
Yeah, that's a thing.
That's a thing. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So here you are, able to do that, trying to win. Next thing you know, you have all these injuries that the doctor says, these are pretty bad. We think you'll recover, but we really can't tell you how well. That's what I would say. How did you deal with that mentally?
Yeah, that was a very difficult time, especially I had a 3.5-year-old and my wife and I had sold our home. We were living in a duplex because we wanted to build a house. And then there was a recession in our province in Canada, in our state. And so my business was struggling. And of course, I do all the marketing and I ran the business with 27 staff. And so there's no marketing because I'm silent. And I honestly couldn't remember how to use a lot of the pieces of software. I couldn't remember a lot of things. I could only stay awake for about an hour and a half, and then I had to sleep for 6 to 8 hours because of the brain injury, and it full on sucked. But I will say, even the moment I woke up in the hospital, I knew I wanted to get back to the race again. I wanted to complete what I'd started, and I just thought, okay, at some point I'm going to get back to racing, and I held on to that. I just clung on to that. It was my anchor and held me through all the tough times because it was tough. I almost lost my business, and my wife and I hadn't even stopped. We hadn't even finished unpacking when we went to the World Championships in Kona because we thought, oh, we'll unpack when we get home. And now I can't brush my own teeth. Like it was tough.
How
I just
about you?
focused. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm going to do what I do at work and ask some personal questions. How did your how did this affect your relationship? Let me put it that way with your wife.
My wife is a miracle. She's awesome. She's my, we call her my all-time believer in her. She's a phenomenal, phenomenal lady. We've been married 30 years this summer, and she's awesome. She was calm and just super supportive, and she's just amazing. We were surrounded by some really great friends. Members of my gym came and shoveled the driveway, and some of them drove me to work. It was good. Like I would go to work for an hour and a half, and I would just plunk in a chair, and my staff would take turns asking me questions, and then they would just go take care of everything. So that was awesome. And my wife, she just was amazing. She was a rock through all of this. She was absolutely a rock. And she had to go through all of the crazy paperwork because our medical bill for the 4 days in the brain trauma unit in Oahu was $185,000. And it was scary. And it was eventually covered by our insurance. We had purchased extra race insurance for $70 and it covered it, but it was a ton of paperwork and stress. And she was just amazing. She's just steady and calm. Yeah. Yeah.
All
She's
right.
amazing.
So rule number one, if you're going to have a tragic accident, make sure you have a supportive wife and friends who are going to help you, because this must have been pretty shocking to her. Some illnesses, they kind of come on and then they get worse, and you have some time to adapt. But this is one of those things, hey, did he win? No, he's in the ambulance, right? I mean, there's no time to prepare for
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that not every interaction you had with the medical system was positive. So tell me about one or two incidences that didn't go well and how you think they might have gone better.
Well, I think the challenge is you need to know what questions to ask. And sometimes as patients, we don't. And we just trust, oh, I don't know, I guess they're going to do the best stuff. But it's a wide spectrum. And so in Oahu, they were really concerned about my brain injury. That was the big number one concern because it was bad. And they focused a lot on that. They didn't x-ray far enough up my arm to catch that my radius was broken in 3 pieces. So they told me I'd sprained my wrist. So for 13 days, I didn't know I had a broken arm. And my clavicle was shattered. And they said, oh, it'll heal on its own. But it was at a really bad angle. The bones had all, after time, they just sort of oozed apart, and my shoulder had dropped, and it was a mess. I couldn't move it, and they never checked out my knee. I had a big chunk of cartilage flapped open, and the MCL was torn. And they repaired together in a fibrous bridge, which became a problem 2 years later. But it was undiagnosed, and because they weren't paying attention to that stuff. They were just worried about the brain injury. And so once they realized my brain was stable enough, they set me free. And my wife was like, are you sure? He seems like he's kind of a mess. And they're like, well, he can stay if you want. It's $1,200 a night or whatever it was. And she was like, oh, okay. Like it. So they set me free. So we just flew back to Kona, and I just laid in our little rental unit for the next week, not able to do much. And then we flew home to Canada, and I had just the most horrible flight home. My head just screamed and everything hurt. And we got a 3.5-year-old who also has ADHD, autism, and Tourette's. So he's busy, and I couldn't help. Plus I've got all this luggage. It was crazy. It was
That
really,
you can't lift with a broken arm.
I couldn't help. And, the airlines were great and everything, but we got home to Canada, and I went and saw my regular MD, and I just said, I can't supinate or pronate this arm. Like I said, it's a sprained wrist, but it feels something's wrong. And my shoulder looks really bad. So I got x-rays, and at the hospital, they're like, oh, you're going straight to surgery, buddy. This is a disaster. And so they took me in, and they did surgery, put a metal plate in my shoulder with a hook under the acromion process to hold the clavicle down in the right position. And she fixed my radius really greatly. And then I got meeting with a neurologist, and they did a CAT scan and MRI, and then they did a deep scan, and they did the Eppley procedure to put all the crystals back in my ear. That explained why I was so crazy dizzy all the time. So there's crystals in your ear that do balance, and I had knocked them free. And of course, so I was just crazy dizzy all the time. Anyway, so they did a lot of stuff in the Canadian hospital, which was really great. So I had really good care there. But of course, The food was terrible. I couldn't wait to get out, but it
So
was
it
good.
sounds like the hospital in Hawaii really did a great job with your brain, but suffered a little bit from tunnel vision. You
Yeah,
must have been in a neuro ICU where
was.
that was their focus, and if it wasn't, from here up, then they really weren't paying a whole lot of attention. Maybe that's their style, but it sounds like a little more coordinated care would have certainly benefited everyone, and would have made it more pleasant. I still want to get back to your motivation. You said you just dreamed of, going back and competing again. And it reminds me, there's a young woman, I don't know the full story, but I remember she was a dedicated surfer in Hawaii. And one fine day, her arm was chomped off by a shark. And when the surfboard, how you hang there with your arms out, and all of
Yeah,
a sudden one arm was gone. I think she was a young teenager at the
I
time.
remember this story.
You remember that story? Yeah, it was
I
in
do.
the
Yeah,
world news. Well, she has since gone back to competitive surfing. I
yeah,
mean, she did not let that. A lot of other people say, "Oh, so you want to go back and surf with the sharks?" Yeah, right. No, but she did. That's what she said. I'm not going to let that, get in my way.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's terrific. And I wonder, is that genetic? Where do you learn how to be that resilient? Was it a matter of faith? This is, Jesus going to save me. And, or did you just say, hey, I'm just not going to sit in a wheelchair. I'm going to, get back to my life.
I think there's a lot of layers to it. A big piece, I think, a lot of ultra endurance athletes do it for a pretty deep reason. It fills a hole in your life that's broken some other way. And actually, through the journey of this, I actually discovered a lot more about that. And in the documentary, we talk about that. I actually went and saw a man in Germany who does something called vegetative training, where he wakes up the parasympathetic response system and the vagus nerve, gets it unblocked and helps, because I, with all the rib damage and everything, there was a lot of physical and emotional trauma. So he helped to work through a lot of that. And we realized a lot of things. A lot of ultra distance athletes, and I was one of them, we go out and relentlessly punish ourselves to compensate for something in life that's bothering us. And it's not necessarily always healthy. I was honestly trying to prove to my family that I was good enough and deserved to be loved. And if I did something really great, they would finally see that I was worthy. And that's a little broken because it's not about that. They love me anyway. Like they don't. It was a broken need that I carried on from being a kid. So once I resolved that, then now I can race because it's fun and I enjoy it. But at the time, I really felt that it was important to get back to that finish line, get back to racing to prove that I was good enough and strong enough. So there was definitely some pieces about it that were a bit messy, if that makes sense.
Well, that's
But
okay. I think your story is inspirational, that despite all, this sudden mess that you found yourself in, that you and your family were able to emerge, not unscathed, but okay,
yeah.
and ready to meet the world on its terms. So let's jump ahead to 2022, right?
Mhm.
It's the end of April 2022. So what are you doing?
Well, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, obviously 2020, the world kind of got kicked over and upside down, and I shut down my gym. I had run my gym for 18 years, 15,000 square foot gym that I had built from nothing. And but I realized really quickly, uh I didn't believe for a second it was 14 days to flatten anything. I thought this is a long haul. We've opened a can of worms here. And I knew I couldn't fund a 15,000 square foot empty building. I couldn't pay the mortgage. I couldn't pay all the bills, even with any government assistance, which was not government assistance was a loan, and I didn't need a loan. So I had lots of those. So we shut down my gym. I sold off all my equipment. And then it was like, well, what are you going to do with your life now? And for 3 months, I was kind of numb. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I kept circling back to I love to help people. I love to coach people. I'm a 24-year veteran personal trainer. I love nutrition and fitness. I love really making a difference. And so I thought, well, what would that look like online? And so I took my best program, a 21-day nutrition reset, And I completely retooled it to be totally online with Zoom calls and daily mindset videos. And I built this studio so that I could record the videos at high quality. And now I coach people online. I have a really successful 21-day program that helps people get away from inflammation, eat real food, healthy food, a balanced diet. I'm not a fan of fad diets and, well, you can't eat any carbs. You can't eat any, I'm not a fan of all that. I like balance. I like sensibility. So the program relies a lot on removing foods that are inflammatory and working on FODMAP stuff. And I just have spectacular results, and I get to change lives. I get to help people daily, and it's super rewarding. It's super fun, and I'm not working 80 to 100 hours a week in a business anymore. So I'm home for my son. So it's levels and layers of brilliance, and I get to train. My garage is now renovated, so I've got my bike trainer, and I've got a treadmill, and I actually have an endless pool swim spa out in the yard, so I can swim,
Ah.
bike, run within 30 feet of itself. And so
So you can
I've
just tell your wife, hey, I'll be back in 3 days.
that's right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
do my race.
Come and feed me a
I'll be in
little.
the backyard on that
Yeah.
stationary bike, 90
Yeah.
miles,
Yeah.
and it's safer, no traffic. Well, good for you. How much do you exercise, say, in a week? Or however you kind of tabulate it?
So I was training for the Ultraman World Championships again last year, and it got canceled again. And this year, because I'm writing the book based on the experience of the crash and recovery, so I think I'm at 62,000 words now, and I've committed to the publishing group to have that done this summer. So I just decided not to do Ultraman this year. So I'm just doing an Ironman at the end of August. So I'm training about 15 hours a week. So pretty much every day I do
A
two
couple
things.
hours a day, come and take a day
Yeah.
off, 2 to 3
Yeah.
hours a day you take Sunday off or take a
Yeah,
break.
exactly. Yeah. I take Sunday off, and then every other day I'm doing one or two trainings. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter.
That's great. That's great. Well, if you want a real challenge, I'll hire you and you can train me. We're starting, we're starting way down here, so it might not be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do exercise regularly. Actually, I think it's good spiritually. It makes you feel a little better, and
Oh,
you know,
totally. Exercise is amazing. Like if you look a lot of the top drugs that people take for stress and anxiety and sleep, they all come from neural pieces that are released after exercise.
right? That you already got. That you
Already
already
have.
got. You just
Yep.
gotta activate them.
That's right. They're on board right now. You just have to release them through exercise. And I think if people would do maybe a combination at the start, some of the medication and some exercise, and eventually not the medication, just the exercise. That's my I think there's a point for both.
Fantastic, Scott. We're just about out of time. Tell everyone anything else you want to say and how people can find you.
I just think to just keep at it. Babe Ruth, I'm not a big baseball guy, but I know I love sports because statistics are great. But everybody knows Babe Ruth because he did 714 home runs, and he was the king of home runs for like 40 years. But people don't realize that he struck out 1,500 times. He was the strikeout king too. He swung at the ball. He was willing to swing at the ball. And one of my favorite quotes is by Babe Ruth, and it says, "It's hard to beat a person that never gives up." And I'm
I
all
like
about
that. I
just
like that.
just never give up. Keep swinging for the home run. Even if you miss, keep swinging. And that's how you get there. Michael Jordan missed the basket 51% of the time. He missed more than he hit. And he's the greatest basketball player. So I'm just a big fan of never give up and keep swinging for the fences.
And do you have a website where we can learn more about your programs?
Yeah. So if you go to scottyfit.com, SCOTTYFIT.com, and there's the links there to the movie, which is called Living the Warrior Code. It's free on YouTube. It's 82 minutes. It's family friendly. There's no cursing. I've had 6-year-olds watch it. There is a scene where there's blood all over the ground and stuff, and I'm being hauled into an ambulance. But for the most part, it's a good family movie. And it's, like I said, it's free on YouTube. And then my programs and stuff are there if you want to get a hold of me or whatever. And I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff.
Scott, this has been really fun. I want to thank you for joining me on the art of medicine.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, Comp Health. At Comp Health, you can talk with a recruiter who knows your specialty and will actually get to know you and your goals. Consider starting your personalized job search at comphealth.com. Again, that's comphealth.com. And thanks again to Scott McDermott. What a great inspirational story. This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on the art of medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The art of medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com